Hey guys, tonight we're stepping back in time, not to the gleaming marble of Rome or the roar of the Colosseum, but to a place far less glamorous. We're heading to the dusty, sun-baked roads of the Roman Empire, where the real work of conquest happened. You're not a noble consul or a celebrated general. You're a private soldier, a legionary, and you're about to discover a simple truth. The most miserable part of your life wasn't the battlefield itself. It was the endless soul-crushing march just to get there. Imagine for a moment that you are right here with me. The sun is already an angry red ball climbing higher in the sky, and you can feel the heat radiating up from the parched earth, baking your sandals to your feet. You probably wouldn't survive a single week, by the way. Most people couldn't. This isn't a history of heroes and glory. It's a history of blisters, sweat, and sheer grinding misery. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know where you're listening from and what time it is, too. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your journey begins as it so often does for a Roman soldier with the relentless, rhythmic pound of feet on the dirt. You're not on a leisurely stroll, you're part of a living, breathing machine, and that machine moves with an efficiency that leaves no room for comfort. You can feel the weight, a soul-crushing, bone-aching burden that is strapped to your back. It's your entire life, your home, your pantry, and your toolbox all wrapped into one, and it feels heavier than any burden you've ever known. It's the weight of destiny, the weight of the empire, and it's digging into your shoulders with every single step. This isn't a small pack. This is your sarkana, your personal kit. Your legionary training, which was probably the most grueling physical ordeal you've ever been through, taught you how to carry it. But that doesn't make it any lighter. It's an entire life slung over a pole, a kind of ancient backpack that has earned you and your comrades the nickname Marius's Mules. Now imagine what's in there. It's not just a change of tunic. You've got your tent, or at least a quarter of it, since you share it with your contubernium, your 8-man squad. You've got your cooking pot, your rations, mostly hard grains like wheat. Though if you're lucky, maybe some salted pork. You've also got your tools, a shovel, a pickaxe, even a small sickle. The Roman army didn't hire a construction crew to build their forts for them. That was your job, and every ounce of that gear is now your problem. You're carrying the foundation of your temporary home on your back, and every single step brings you closer to having to use it. The pace is relentless. A seasoned legion could cover 20, even 25 miles in a single day. That's a marathon, and you're doing it not in running shoes and shorts, but in heavy leather sandals, the kalagi, and carrying the equivalent of a modern person's entire life on your back. Forget those fancy hiking boots from today. These were built for durability, not for comfort. They were more or less a thick sole with leather straps, and they did a fantastic job of giving you a blister for every mile you traveled. You can feel the grit and dust of the road grinding into the skin between your toes, and a dull ache has started to radiate up your shins. The only thing that distracts you from the pain is the even greater agony of the man next to you who just got a rock stuck in his sandal. Now that's a special kind of misery. The sun is a silent, burning tormentor. It beats down on your head, making the air shimmer above the road. Your wool tunic, which was a great insulator on a cold night, now feels like a damp, itchy blanket. Sweat runs down your face, stinging your eyes and pools in your armor. You can smell it, the acrid, sour scent of 1,000 men all sweating in unison. It's a smell that will become as familiar to you as the scent of the wood smoke from the campfires at night. You try to take a sip from your water skin, but the water is already warm and tastes faintly of the treated leather. It's never enough. The thirst is a constant companion, a dry, grating sensation at the back of your throat that no amount of stale water seems to quench. You learn to ration your sips to feel every drop as it goes down, knowing that the next oasis might be hours away. And this is just the beginning. The Roman army didn't just march in good weather. They marched through rain that turned the roads into a muddy quagmire, each step sucking at your feet with a sickening squelch. They marched through freezing snow and biting winds that made your skin raw. One of the common historical truths about the Roman military is that they were primarily an engineering corps that happened to fight. They built roads, bridges, and aqueducts, and the foundation of that massive effort was the simple brute force of you and your fellow soldiers, marching and working day in and day out. They moved with a purpose, a strategic rhythm that was terrifying in its efficiency. Every so often you'll hear a low, sharp command from a centurion, and the whole column will shift. Maybe it's to make a slight detour or to tighten the ranks. There is no question, no protest. You simply obey, and the rhythm of the march continues. Your diet on the march is just as monotonous as the scenery. A few handfuls of grain each day, perhaps a little salt and olive oil if you're lucky. This was the frumentum, the Roman soldier's staple food. You would grind it into a rough flour at camp, mix it with water, and bake it into a hard biscuit. It was bland hard, and it kept you alive, but it didn't give you much joy. You'd see a small patch of wild berries on the side of the road, and your mouth would water, but you'd never break ranks to grab them. The penalty for insubordination was far worse than the gnawing pangs of hunger. Historians still debate whether the standard ration of frumentum was supplemented with enough fresh food to prevent nutrient deficiencies on long marches, or if you were simply expected to make do with whatever you could find or buy. It's a question that probably mattered little to you as you chewed on another rock-hard biscuit. This isn't to say there weren't a few perks. Sometimes if you were in a civilized area, you might be able to buy some local cheese or a few onions from a vendor who had set up shop near the road. But that was rare. Mostly it was just the unending march, the steady drone of 1,000 men's boots, the creak of leather, and the soft clinking of bronze armor. Your mind wanders. You think of home, of the farm you left behind, or of the girl who promised to wait for you. Maybe you think of the money you're earning, the silver denarii that will one day buy you a plot of land and a life of quiet peace. But those thoughts are a kind of luxury. Mostly you focus on the simple things, putting one foot in front of the other, staying in line and not falling behind. Falling behind is not an option. Your centurion, the hardened veteran who walks with an impossibly straight back, makes sure of that. He's not a friend, he's a force of nature, and he's there to ensure that every single man in the column keeps pace no matter the cost. The ground changes from dirt to gravel then to a rough stony path. You can feel the sharp stones through the soles of your sandals, and a new kind of pain begins to bloom in your feet. The weight on your back feels heavier with every minute that passes. It's all you can think about. It's the kind of physical misery that makes your brain shut down, that turns your world into nothing but the road in front of you and the back of the man's head in front of you. He is just as tired as you are, and you both know it. A shared glance, a weary nod is all the communication you need. You are a unit, a machine, and you are all running on fumes. There's no room for heroics here, no glorious charges or mighty battles. This is the hard, cold reality of empire building. The sun finally begins to dip toward the horizon, and you feel a surge of exhausted hope. Is it time? A call echoes down the line, and the column begins to slow. The weary sighs and groans are almost audible. You've made it, but this isn't the end of your day. This is just the end of the first part. The real work is about to begin. You've marched for 12 hours, but now you have to build your own camp, your own fortress to protect yourself from the night. The thought is almost enough to make you collapse. You just want to sit down and rest, to take off these awful sandals and rub your aching feet, but the orders are coming. You unshoulder your pack, your body groaning in relief, and you immediately get to work. There's no time to rest. The Roman army's discipline was legendary, and it was never more evident than at the end of a long march. The camp must be built, and it must be built quickly and correctly. Stakes for the perimeter trenches to be dug, tents to be erected. Every man knows his job, and every man gets to it. You pick up your shovel, the same shovel you've been carrying all day, and start digging into the hard ground. It's a thankless task made even worse by the fact that you know you'll just have to do it all over again tomorrow. You've earned the title Marius's Mule for a reason, but it's a badge of honor, a testament to your endurance. You might be miserable, but you're miserable together. The Roman military didn't win its battles with genius alone. It won them with the sheer back-breaking, relentless determination of you and thousands of men just like you, all marching forward one painful step at a time. The glory belongs to the generals, but the foundation of the empire, the dirt and the sweat, the blisters and the aching shoulders, that all belongs to you. The sun finally dips below the horizon, and you feel the blessed, albeit temporary relief of a cooling breeze. The marching has stopped, but just as the promise of rest whispers in your ear, the orders come. No, you are not done for the day. You are just beginning the second, more exhausting phase of your daily routine. This is the moment when the Roman military's legendary discipline and engineering genius truly reveal themselves not in a grand siege, but in the methodical, back-breaking labor of building your own home for the night. You've been carrying a shovel, a pickaxe, and a bundle of sharpened stakes all day, and now you understand why. It's time to become a part-time construction worker, and believe me, the pay is even worse than the marching. The centurions and officers move with a purpose that you in your state of near collapse can only dream of. The whole column is already splitting into pre-assigned groups, each heading to a specific area of the future camp. The Roman castra, their fortified camp, wasn't just a haphazard collection of tents. It was a miniature perfect replica of a permanent Roman fort, a grid of precision and logic. And every single night you built it from scratch. It's a fact so common in military history, it's almost a cliche, but it's a cliche for a reason. It's what set the legions apart. While your enemies were huddling around a campfire, the Roman soldier was digging a defensive trench. You and your 8-man contubernium are assigned your small plot of land within the grand design. With practiced, exhausted movements, you unshoulder your gear and get to work. The first priority is security. The entire camp must be surrounded by a ditch, a fossa, and a rampart or agger made from the very earth you're digging. You plunge your dolabra, a tool that's a brutal combination of a pickaxe and a shovel, into the hard ground. It's already been used and abused by your comrades for miles, and the handle is slick with sweat. The sound of thousands of shovels hitting the earth is a low, ceaseless symphony of grunts and groans, punctuated by the sharp crack of a pickaxe hitting rock. The trench must be dug to a specific depth and width. The dirt you pull out is piled up behind it to form the rampart, which will be topped with the sharpened stakes you've been lugging all day. You work in silence, your muscles burning, your mind blank. There's no time for conversation, no energy for jokes. It's just you and the earth, a relentless battle to turn a patch of open ground into a defensible position before nightfall. The centurions patrol the perimeter, barking commands and ensuring that no one is slacking. This isn't just about discipline. It's about survival. A poorly built camp could be overrun by a surprise attack, and the punishment for sloppiness would be far worse than a few aching muscles. The stakes you carried, the pila muralia, are a thing of beauty in their simplicity, and a testament to the weight you just endured. Each one has a forked end designed to be interwoven with the others to form an impenetrable palisade fence on top of the rampart. You have a handful of them, and your job is to drive them in, creating a wall of sharpened wood that will make any enemy think twice about a frontal assault. By the time the fence is up, you can barely lift your arms. The dirt and sweat have caked into your tunic, and a new kind of exhaustion has set in. Not the weary, bone-deep tiredness of marching, but the complete physical collapse of manual labor. You feel like a human plow having tilled a field the size of a small town. One of the lesser-known but utterly crucial details of this process is the standardization of the camp layout. Every Roman castra was a perfect square or rectangle oriented to the cardinal directions, with specific streets and 4 main gates. It was so uniform that a soldier from one legion could arrive at a camp built by another legion, and instantly know where to find the granary, the commander's tent, and his own centuria's quarters. It was like an ancient Roman IKEA manual, a flat-pack fortress, except you had to build it in the dark, using nothing but your own strength and a shovel. This incredible consistency wasn't just for neatness, it was a psychological weapon. It projected an image of absolute control and order, a visible sign that the empire was in charge, even out in the middle of nowhere. It made your own life a bit easier too, because you knew exactly where you were supposed to be, even in the middle of a foreign land. Once the perimeter is secure, you turn to the internal camp. You and your comrades finally get to set up your tents. They're not much, just a simple leather shelter, but it's your home for the night. You share it with your 7 tent mates, and the air inside is thick with the smell of unwashed bodies and damp leather. You drop your personal gear inside, and for a moment you just stand there breathing. That's your victory for the day, a brief, fleeting moment of stillness. But there's more to do. You have to gather firewood, start a fire for cooking, and maybe get something warm into your stomach before you're sent on guard duty. Historians still debate whether legions in certain regions, like the marshy forested lands of Germania, relied more on wood and less on earthworks due to the terrain. Did you spend more time felling trees than digging trenches? Did the materials you used change with the seasons? You don't have time to ponder such academic questions. You just do what the centurion tells you to do. The rhythm of your life is dictated by the orders of those above you, and tonight that rhythm is work, work, work. You are not an individual, you are a cog in a massive, well-oiled military machine. Finally, after what feels like a lifetime of labor, you get to eat. Your meal is as always simple. A bowl of hot porridge made from your daily ration of wheat, perhaps some lentils or beans if you are lucky. It's a small comfort, but a comfort nonetheless. The firelight flickers on the faces of your comrades, men you've marched with for months. Men whose lives are as miserable and as monotonous as your own. You share a few words, a weary joke, a complaint about the heat or the cold or the bugs. You clean your armor and your weapons, a task you can never neglect, and then, if you're not on guard duty, you can finally blissfully lay down and try to sleep. But even then, you're not truly at rest. The camp is a living thing and it never sleeps. Sentries walk the perimeter, their footsteps a constant low thud. The sounds of men talking, snoring, and coughing echo faintly through the night. A horse might whinny or a centurion might shout a command. You sleep with one ear open, your senses on high alert, even in your exhausted state. The training is so ingrained that you can almost feel the presence of the ditch and the rampart, a silent reassurance against the unknown dangers of the night. You're only going to be here for one night, maybe two if the army is resting, but you know that at the first sign of dawn, at the sound of the morning trumpet call, you'll be tearing it all down. The rampart will be leveled, the ditch will be filled in, and you'll pack up your gear, put that back-breaking burden back on your shoulders, and start the whole miserable process over again. The cycle of misery is complete. The morning trumpet blares, but it's not the usual wake-up call to dismantle your hard-won camp. This sound is different. It's sharper, more urgent. It cuts through the morning fog and the lingering exhaustion, a sound that says, all that marching, all that digging, all that misery. It was all for this. This is the day you've been training for, the reason you've suffered through endless miles and back-breaking labor. This is the day you face the enemy not on a training field, but on the unforgiving field of battle. And as you feel the knot of fear tighten in your stomach, you realize that all those hardships were just a prelude to a moment of sheer, unadulterated terror. You grab your gear with a new sense of grim purpose. Your heavy bronze helmet, your lorica segmentata, the segmented plate armor that feels both reassuringly protective and impossibly heavy, and your shield, the scutum. This curved rectangular shield isn't just a piece of wood and leather. It's your life. It's the only thing standing between you and a very bad day. As you fall into formation, the air crackles with an energy you've never felt before. The sun glints off 1,000 helmets, and you hear the low rumble of your comrades' chants, a deep guttural sound that both calms your nerves and makes your heart pound. The common historical fact that you've heard 100 times in training is about to become your reality. Roman soldiers don't fight as individuals. You are not a hero in a duel. You are a single anonymous part of a massive living machine. Your strength, your survival, your very existence depends on the man to your left and the man to your right. You're shoulder to shoulder, a dense, unwavering wall of men and steel. The famous testudo formation, the tortoise, is just an extension of this core idea. It's a shield wall that can absorb unbelievable punishment, because it's not about one man's bravery. It's about everyone's discipline. The enemy line appears in the distance. They look wild, chaotic. They roar and beat their shields and shake their spears. You can hear their war cries and insults, a cacophony of sound that is meant to intimidate. But you've been trained for this. You've marched through worse sounds in the middle of the night. You stand with the discipline of a stone wall. You can't help but think it's like a mosh pit, but with more pointy things and a lot less good music. The gap between you and them closes. Now you can see their faces, a mix of rage and fear. You can smell their sweat and the animal stink of their leather and furs. The roar of the battle is deafening, now a wall of sound that threatens to crush you before a single sword is drawn. And then comes the order. It's not a shout. It's a calm, precise command from the centurion. Pila. This is the moment. You raise your pilum, your heavy javelin. It's not a graceful weapon. It's an ugly, iron-headed spear designed for one thing only. A quick prayer to the gods, a deep breath, and you hurl it forward along with every other man in the first ranks. The air fills with the whistling sound of 1,000 projectiles. They slam into the enemy's shields with a sickening crack. This is the truly brilliant yet utterly obscure detail of Roman engineering. The pilum was designed with a soft iron shank just behind the hardened tip. When it struck a shield, that soft iron would bend. The spear would get stuck. The weight of it would make the shield unwieldy, and because the shaft was bent, the enemy couldn't simply pull it out and throw it back. They had to either drop their now useless shield or face you with it as a useless bent hunk of wood and metal. It was a grim, effective trick. Now the real work begins. Your sword, the gladius, is in your hand. This isn't a long, elegant sword like a medieval knight's. It's short, brutal, and made for close quarters fighting. You don't slash with it, you thrust. You use the edge of your shield to smash an enemy's face or knock them off balance, and then you use the short stabbing motion to strike at their unarmored vitals. It's a grim dance of death, a brutal ballet of push and stab. Your body moves on instinct, on muscle memory forged in years of endless training. It's a chaos so complete it feels strangely quiet. All you can hear is the pounding of your own heart and the ragged breath of the man next to you. Historians still debate whether the men in the front ranks of a legion were psychologically or physically different from the men behind them. Were they all volunteers for this living nightmare, or were they just the unluckiest men in the cohort? You don't know. You only know that you are here in the front, and the only way to survive is to keep pushing forward. The enemy charges with all the wild enthusiasm of a kid who just discovered candy, and all the tactics of a drunk guy in a bar fight. You are a disciplined professional machine, and they are, well, they're just men. The battle is short, as it so often is, and brutal. The chaos is a blur of faces, of grunts and shouts, of the slick feel of blood and the clang of metal. You push, you stab, you defend, you push again. The line holds. It doesn't break. And then, as suddenly as it began, it's over. The enemy breaks and runs. The roar of the battle fades, replaced by the screams of the wounded and the moans of the dying. The silence that follows is more terrifying than the noise of battle. You are left standing in a field of death, your body shaking, your mind numb. The adrenaline is fading, and you can feel the true exhaustion of it all. You look down at your hands, slick with sweat and grime, and you just want to sit down and be still. But the centurion is already barking orders. The battle is over, but your work isn't. You have to tend to the wounded, gather the dead, and prepare to move on. All that hard work, all the marching and digging, and for what a chance to get a really bad haircut from a German axe, or worse, to give one. It's a grim, sobering joke and a reminder that the misery of a soldier's life isn't just about the hardships, it's about the ever-present knowledge that a single random moment can end it all. You are a part of a great empire, a great story, but your part is a small one, and it can be erased in the blink of an eye. You survived. The roar of the battle has faded, the clashing of steel is gone, replaced by the grim work of the aftermath. You are alive, and that feels like a miracle. You're lucky. But as the fear slowly recedes from your bones, a new, more insidious dread begins to creep in. You see, the most terrifying threats in a Roman soldier's life aren't the ones you can see on the battlefield. They're the ones you can't. They are invisible, they are everywhere, and they are far more likely to kill you than any barbarian's sword. They are disease hunger and the quiet, relentless brutality of the elements. Let's start with the great equalizer disease. You've been marching for weeks, sleeping in a dirty tent with 7 other men. Your camp, which you so painstakingly built, has a latrine pit, but it's a hole in the ground, just a short walk from the well you draw your water from. Sanitation as a concept doesn't really exist. Every time you cut yourself on a rusty piece of armor or get a scrape from a rock, you know there's a good chance it will fester and get infected. You can feel the dirt caked on your skin, a fine layer of grime that's a breeding ground for every ailment you can imagine. The most common killer is not a sword, but a simple fever or a stomach ailment. You and your comrades are all on the brink of dysentery, a gut-wrenching, debilitating illness that spreads through the camp like wildfire. You see a man from the next contubernum shaking with fever, his eyes glassy and his skin hot. Your medic, the Capsarius, is a guy with a pouch of herbs and a pair of pliers. He's great for pulling an arrow out of your arm, but for a sickness that's turning you into a ghost, he's useless. He can offer you a prayer to the gods, but a God-fearing fever will take you just the same. A common historical fact, one that historians and archaeologists have proven time and again, is that disease and malnutrition were the leading causes of death for Roman soldiers. Far more men died from sickness than from combat. The romanticized image of the heroic legionary who falls in glorious battle is mostly a myth. The more likely scenario is that you'll die on a straw bed, racked by fever 100 miles from home, with nothing but your terrified comrades to watch you go. It's a miserable, undignified end, a stark reminder that life is cheap, and victory is won on the backs of the walking sick. Then there is the problem of food. You remember the fermentum from the march, that hard, dry wheat, that was your main source of sustenance. It's a marvel of engineering, really. It can survive a year in your pack, and you're pretty sure a horse wouldn't touch it. But when the supply lines are cut, that's all you have. And sometimes you don't even have that. You're on campaign in a hostile land, and the locals have burned their fields and hidden their livestock. Your army, a massive entity that consumes tons of food every day, has to rely on foraging and what little it brought with it. And it's never enough. You feel the gnawing, hollow ache of hunger in your stomach, a constant companion that weakens you day by day. The lack of a varied diet can lead to its own set of problems. You and your comrades eat nothing but grains and dried meat, and the symptoms of scurvy, bleeding gums, rotting teeth, and a general feeling of weakness are not uncommon. Your body starts to fall apart from the inside out. You're a lean, hardened warrior, but you're also a man who is slowly, imperceptibly starving to death. This is the silent war that is fought every single day, a battle against your own biology. And then there's the weather. The Roman Empire was vast, and you were a cog in its machinery sent to the ends of the known world. You are either sweating so much in the scorching sun of a desert campaign that your armor is rusting on your body, or you are shivering in the damp, endless cold of Britannia. The constant wetness and frigid temperatures of the north meant that your feet and hands were always at risk of frostbite. Simple hypothermia, which in your modern world is a rare occurrence, was a daily possibility. You'd spend your nights huddled with your comrades in a cold, damp tent, trying to get a few hours of rest, but the cold would seep into your bones. The wind howls outside, rattling the tent flaps, and you can't get the image of home out of your mind, a warm hearth and a full meal. One of the more obscure details of Roman military life is the existence of the valetudinarium, a military hospital in a permanent fortress. It was a testament to the fact that the Romans understood the importance of medical care. But you're not in a permanent fortress. You're on the move, and your only hospital is a tent where the sick are left to their fates. This is the miserable irony. The Roman Empire built aqueducts and baths, but on campaign, its soldiers lived in conditions of squalor that would make a modern person ill just by looking at them. Historians still debate whether legions campaigning in malarial regions of Italy were more decimated by disease than by their enemies. Was the Roman triumph over the Gauls as much about their medical fortitude as it was their military might? You don't know. You only know that you are alive today, but there's no guarantee for tomorrow. It's a constant low-level anxiety, the knowledge that any moment a tiny invisible threat could bring you to your knees. Your body is a machine, a tool of the empire, but it's a fragile one. The misery of a Roman soldier's life is not just in the visible wounds of battle, but in the slow, unseen process of your body and mind being broken down by the relentless hardships of existence. You've survived the battle, you've somehow avoided the diseases that have decimated your comrades, and you've weathered the endless rain and the sun. You might feel a sense of relief, a moment of fleeting peace, but you shouldn't. Because there is a constant, ever-present threat that you can never escape, one that is as deliberate as it is cruel. It's the iron fist of Roman discipline. The Roman military wasn't just a force of arms, it was a force of fear, a system that maintained order and obedience not through trust, but through the terrifying knowledge that a single mistake could cost you everything. Your centurion, the hardened veteran who leads your centuria, isn't just a field commander. He is the law. His staff, the Vetus, isn't just a symbol of his rank. It's a blunt instrument for encouraging faster work, better hygiene, and a more respectful attitude toward your superiors. The Vitis is always there, either in his hand or tucked into his belt, a constant, silent reminder of his absolute power. A small infraction, a dirty tunic, a misplaced piece of gear, a moment of hesitation can earn you a sharp, painful blow from that staff. This is the constant low-level misery of a Roman soldier's life. You are a man under perpetual surveillance, every action judged, every mistake punished. It's like working for a boss who yells at you, but instead of getting a bad performance review, you get a really painful lesson in discipline. But the real misery, the true terror, lies in the public punishments. These weren't just about correcting a single man's behavior. They were about sending a message to every man in the legion. They were a spectacle, a lesson in obedience delivered through pain. The most common was flogging, a punishment for more serious offenses like theft or insubordination. You'd be stripped, tied to a post, and beaten in front of the entire centuria. The sound of the whip, the sickening thud of the lash on skin, is a sound you will never forget. It's a sound that makes you clench your fists and your jaw, a sound that reminds you that you are not a free man. You are property of the state, and it can punish you as it sees fit. A common historical fact is that this brutal discipline was seen as a necessary part of the military's success. It was what gave the Roman legions their legendary cohesion. While other armies might break and run, the Roman legionary would hold the line not just out of courage, but out of a deep-seated fear of what would happen if he didn't. This iron discipline was what separated a professional army from a rabble of untrained warriors. It was what made a Roman soldier push through the pain, through the hunger, and through the fear. But the most infamous punishment, the one that makes the hair on the back of your neck stand up, is decimation. Historians still debate whether decimation was a truly common punishment or a rare extreme measure reserved for the most catastrophic failures like a mutiny or the loss of an entire battle. But the mere threat of it, the mere knowledge that it existed, was enough. A legion that had shown cowardice or insubordination would be assembled in a huge circle, and your entire cohort, all 100 of you, would be brought to the center. Then the terror truly begins. 1 in every 10 men is chosen by lots to be executed by his own comrades. You watch in horror as the dice are rolled and the number is called out. You pray it's not you. You pray it's not the man next to you. And then you watch as your friends, your tent mates, the men you've marched and fought with, turn on a comrade and beat him to death. This is the ultimate psychological torture. The Roman military wasn't just punishing you. It was making you complicit in the punishment. It was forcing you to turn against your own, to become an enforcer of this brutal system. It made you question who your real enemy was. Was it the barbarians on the battlefield? Or was it the system that could turn your friends into killers in the blink of an eye? You are no longer just fighting for Rome. You are fighting for your own survival. A desperate, frantic scramble to avoid being the 1 man in 10 who gets a losing ticket. 1 in 10 of you is going to die today, and it's all because Dave over there forgot to tie his sandals correctly. One of the more obscure details of this system is the castigatio. This wasn't just the right to strike a soldier with the vine staff. It was a part of the daily, constant life of a legionary. The centurion's staff was a physical extension of his authority, a tool used not just for punishment, but for instruction. It could be used to correct your form in a shield drill or to poke you into position in a formation. This constant, low-level physical contact was a way of reinforcing the power dynamic, a reminder that your body, your life belonged to the centurion and by extension to Rome. You never truly felt at ease. You were always a heartbeat away from a physical correction, a public humiliation, or worse. The misery of a Roman soldier's life wasn't just about the hardships of the march or the terror of battle. It was also about the soul-crushing psychological weight of this discipline. You were a man constantly on edge, constantly trying to be perfect, constantly living in fear of a system that was designed to break you down, not with a single blow, but with 1,000 tiny miseries, and the ever-present threat of a single horrific act. You might survive the battlefield, and you might dodge the diseases, but you could never escape the feeling of a centurion's gaze on your back, or the cold, clammy terror of 1,000 other men's quiet fear. You faced the enemy, survived disease, and endured the terrifying justice of the centurion's staff. Through all the physical and mental anguish, there's one thing you've been holding on to, one single glimmering light at the end of the tunnel: your salary. You're a professional soldier and you've been promised a wage. After all this misery, surely the financial reward will make it all worthwhile. You've been thinking about the pay, about the few hundred denarii a year you're promised, and what it could buy you. Maybe a small farm back home, a new life. But you're about to learn that the Roman Empire had a very special way of taking everything from you. Not just your sweat and your blood, but your money too. You see, a soldier's pay was a cruel illusion, a grand promise eaten away by 1,000 tiny cuts. You finally get your pay, or rather your centurion gets it for you. This is a common historical fact. Roman soldiers' salaries weren't handed out in a nice, neat envelope. They were administered by your superiors, who also served as your bank, your accountant, and your financial advisor, whether you liked it or not. The money never really felt like yours. It was more of an abstract number, an amount that was almost immediately subject to a brutal system of deductions. Your Roman paycheck is like looking at your modern paycheck and seeing that taxes and health insurance have been replaced with sword, shield, and burial plot. First and foremost, your equipment. All that gear you've been lugging around: the heavy Larica segmentata armor, the powerful gladius sword, the scutum shield, your helmet, your javelins, none of it was free. You have to pay for it. The cost of just a sword was so astronomical that it would take months, maybe even a year of your pay to cover it. Your armor was an investment that you hoped would last you a lifetime, and it was an investment that you were paying for with the very life it was meant to protect. It's a very weird kind of layaway plan where you're paying for something that might just get you killed. You're paying for this armor, and you're pretty sure it's a final sale, no refunds kind of deal. There are no store returns on a rusty Larica. Then there's your food. You remember the dry, tasteless fermentum that was your daily ration on the march. You didn't think you were paying for that, did you? Oh, you were. That small, paltry sustenance was also deducted from your pay. Every mouthful of that bland porridge, every handful of dry wheat was a line item on your ledger. It was a constant daily subtraction from your already pitiful salary. You're not just enduring the misery of the food, you're paying for the privilege of it too. And it doesn't stop there. You have to pay for your clothing, your sandals, your tent, and your tools. The shovel and pickaxe you used to dig the camp every night. That was an expense. The rope you used to tie up your pack. Also an expense. The Roman army, in its brutal efficiency, had a way of monetizing your entire existence, turning your very life into a series of financial obligations. You were constantly in debt to the military, and that debt was repaid in sweat and misery. One of the most morbid yet utterly fascinating details of a Roman soldier's life is the existence of the collegia funeratitia, or the burial fund. This was a contribution that you and your comrades had to pay into. It was a small amount, but it was a regular one. The money was set aside to ensure that if you died, you would at least get a proper burial. This is the most reliable investment you've ever made in a small piece of land you'll hopefully never use. It's a grim, sobering thought. You are literally paying for your own funeral, a kind of death insurance policy taken out by the state. It's a reminder, if you ever needed one, of how cheap your life was and how little control you had over it. Historians still debate whether a legionary's pay, after all deductions, was truly a livable wage for an average Roman citizen. Was it enough to save? Was it enough to send home to your family, or was it just enough to keep you on the edge of financial ruin, indebted to the very system that controlled your every move? You can't help but feel that for all your bravery, all your hardship, you are essentially a slave to the system, working not for glory or for riches, but to pay off your ever-growing debts. This financial misery was a constant low-level stressor. You could survive a battle and get killed by a disease, but you could also survive all of that and end up with nothing. You were a fighting machine, a tool of conquest, and at the end of the day, your only reward was the honor of being a small, insignificant part of the empire's great story. The pay you were promised was a carrot on a stick, a dream that was always just out of reach, a grim economic reality that was just as miserable as the march, the battle, or the disease. You had no wealth, no savings, and no real future, just the hope of a pension that you might never live to see. You've survived the battle, the disease, and the crushing financial burdens of being a Roman soldier. But even when you're not on the march, even when you're not staring down an enemy line, you are living a life of profound misery. You are in a permanent fort, a place that seems on the surface like a welcome reprieve from the dangers of the open road. But you are about to discover that your living conditions, the very place you rest your weary body, are a breeding ground for a different kind of misery, the slow grinding and inescapable misery of squalor and filth. The Roman Empire is famous for its public baths, its aqueducts, its engineering marvels of sanitation. But you are not in Rome. You are in a permanent garrison in a far-flung corner of the empire, and your life here is a stark contrast to the glorious images of the city. You live in a barrack block, a long, simple building made of wood and stone. You share a small room with your 7 comrades from your contubernum. It's a space that is impossibly cramped, filled with the stale air of 100 unwashed bodies. Your bed is a straw mattress on a wooden frame, and it's probably crawling with fleas and lice. You can feel them, a constant itchy irritation that is a normal part of your existence. You're pretty sure you have more fleas than the centurion has good ideas, and that's a lot of fleas. There is no privacy here. You eat, you sleep, you live, and you clean your gear in the same small space with the same 7 men. You know their every smell, their every snore, their every cough. There is no escape from them, and there is no escape from yourself. The air is thick with the scent of stale sweat, old leather armor, and the faint smell of wood smoke, and 100 other indescribable odors. It's a sensory assault, and it never ever stops. And then there are the latrines. This is where the true horror of your living conditions becomes a grim reality. A common historical fact is that Roman soldiers lived in crowded, unhygienic conditions, and the latrines are a perfect example of why disease was so rampant. You walk into a simple room with a long stone or wooden bench with holes cut into it. There are no stalls, no privacy. You sit side by side with your comrades, your business a public affair. The stench is overpowering, a foul combination of human waste and stagnant water. It makes your eyes water and your stomach lurch. And here is one of the more obscure and frankly disgusting details of this grim reality, the communal sponge. There is no toilet paper. Instead, you and your comrades share a single long-handled sponge, a tersorium, which is kept in a bucket of water. You and your comrades share a sponge on a stick. It's a great way to learn to trust the guy you're fighting with, but a terrible way to learn about personal hygiene. After using it, you put it back in the bucket for the next person. The thought of it is enough to make a modern person ill, but for you it is simply a part of your daily life. You try not to think about what diseases are being spread, but you know that they are. Bathing when it happens is a luxury. While some permanent forts had baths, they were often small, not nearly large enough for an entire legion, and the water was a precious resource. Your daily hygiene routine is probably just a quick splash of cold water on your face if you're lucky. You spend your life coated in a fine layer of dirt and sweat, a living testament to the fact that all of Rome's technological prowess couldn't solve the most basic of human problems when you were living on the edge of the world. It's like a college dorm room, but 1,000 times worse, and everyone is carrying a short sword. This constant, unending filth is more than just a physical discomfort. It's a mental one. There is no escape. The dirt, the stench, the lack of privacy, it all wears you down day after day. You are a human being, but your living conditions are those of a domesticated animal. There is no personal space, no quiet moment to yourself. Your life is one of constant noise, constant smell, and constant discomfort. Historians still debate whether the Roman army built baths and permanent forts for hygiene, or primarily as a way to maintain morale and offer a psychological reprieve from the grim living conditions. Was it a genuine attempt to keep you healthy, or just a way to give you a moment of temporary cleanliness so you wouldn't go mad from the filth? You don't know, but you do know that the baths, when you get to use them, are the single greatest luxury in your life. The misery of a Roman soldier's life isn't just about fighting on a bloody battlefield. It's about the daily grinding reality of your existence. It's about a lack of dignity, a lack of privacy, and a lack of basic human comfort. You can't escape the dirt, the vermin, or the oppressive lack of personal space. The enemy might be on the other side of the wall, but your real enemy is the filth that surrounds you, a silent and deadly killer that claims more lives than any sword. You are a soldier of the most powerful empire in the world, and you are living in a squalor that would be unimaginable to your modern counterparts. You've endured the march, you've faced down the enemy, you've survived the plagues of disease and the constant filth of your living quarters. You've even managed to stay on the right side of your centurion's staff. All of this, the endless misery, the physical pain, the constant fear. It all comes down to one thing: the promise of the end, the promise of retirement. This is the single tangible goal that keeps you from giving up the light at the end of the very long, very dark tunnel. The promise is clear: serve for 25 years and you will be granted your honesta missio, an honorable discharge, a small plot of land, and a lump sum of money. But you're about to learn that this is perhaps the greatest, most soul-crushing misery of all the long, agonizing wait for a reward you might never live to see. A common historical fact is that a Roman soldier's career was a marathon, not a sprint. You joined the legions in your late teens or early 20s, a young man with a spirit full of patriotism and a head full of dreams. You won't leave until you're in your 40s, a hardened veteran whose body is broken by 1,000 tiny hardships. 25 years is a lifetime. You've already survived more than most people will in their entire lives. You've seen friends die from a bad gut or a stray arrow. You've marched through mud and over mountains. You've gone hungry and you've gone thirsty. You've endured the worst the world has to offer, and you're only halfway to your goal. You sign a 25-year contract and they don't even throw in a free tunic. It's like a phone plan, but instead of an upgrade, you just get to not die. The psychological toll of this waiting is almost unbearable. Every morning when the trumpet sounds, you feel the weight of another day, another 24 hours to survive. You start to count not in days, but in years. 5 more years in Germania. 10 more years in Gaul. 15 more years until you can finally go home. The idea of living a long, peaceful life on a farm is a fantasy that you hold onto a dream that is both a comfort and a torture. You see the fresh-faced recruits come into the camp, and you look at their unlined faces and their hopeful eyes, and you feel a mix of pity and envy. They have no idea what they're in for, and there's a good chance they won't make it as far as you have. The most powerful part of the pension promise was the missio agraria, the land grant. This wasn't just a financial incentive. It was the ultimate dream, the ultimate reward for a life of service. You'd get a plot of land maybe in Italy, maybe in a newly conquered province. It would be yours, a place where you could finally put down your sword, marry a woman, and have children. It was the dream of being a citizen again, not just a soldier. This was the one tangible thing that made all the misery, the pain, and the sacrifice worth it. You could almost feel the soil between your fingers, the sun on your face as you tilled your own fields. But you know deep in your heart that most men don't make it. You've seen the numbers. A shocking percentage of your comrades have died from disease, from combat, from simple accidents. It's a quiet, cold statistic that hangs over your head, a constant reminder that the odds are not in your favor. You are a lottery winner, just for being alive this long, but the real prize is still so far away. You've survived for 25 years, so now you get to retire to a quiet life of limping, grunting, and complaining about your knees, which are probably the consistency of fine gravel by now. Historians still debate whether a retired legionary's land grant was truly in a productive agricultural region, or if it was often a remote, less than desirable plot that no one else wanted. Was the dream as good as the reality? Or were you simply being sent to a difficult and isolated place, a kind of second-class citizen even in retirement? You don't know the answer. You only know that you would take any plot of land anywhere just for the chance to be done with the army. Even if you survive the 2.5 decades of service, the bureaucracy can still ruin you. The Roman Empire was a massive, unwieldy machine, and its administration was slow and inefficient. You fill out more forms to get your pension than you did to join up, and you're pretty sure they're just trying to lose your paperwork in a pile somewhere in Rome. You've heard stories of veterans who waited for years for their land and money their old age wasting away while they waited for a piece of paper. The misery of a Roman soldier's life isn't just about the physical hardship. It's about the deep-seated psychological suffering of a life that is lived entirely for a promise that might never be fulfilled. You are a man who has given his entire youth, his entire life for an empire that sees you as a simple tool. And at the end of it all, you might get a piece of land and some money, but you might also get nothing but a grave on a hillside 100 miles from the home you can no longer remember. The promise of retirement is a beautiful dream, but for most it was just another form of misery. You've survived it all. The physical misery of the march and the filth, the psychological trauma of discipline and battle, the soul-crushing financial reality of your pay, and the agonizing wait for a retirement you might never see. But as the years pass, a new, more profound misery begins to set in, one that no sword can cut and no disease can infect. It's the misery of being alone, of being a stranger in a strange land, of being so far from home that the memories begin to fade. You are a Roman soldier, a citizen of the great empire, and you are a man adrift in a sea of loneliness and alienation. You are a long way from the quiet streets of your hometown. You are in Britannia, a cold and damp place, or in Syria, a hot and unforgiving desert. You haven't seen your family in years, maybe even a decade. A letter from home takes so long to get here, you're pretty sure your mom is still asking if you remembered to pack clean tunics even though you've been gone for 10 years and she's probably a ghost by now. Communication is slow, unreliable, and your world shrinks to the perimeter of the fort. Your life is dictated by the trumpet calls, the sound of marching feet, and the constant familiar presence of the men in your legion. The memories of home begin to blur around the edges. The faces of your parents and siblings, the smell of your mother's cooking. The sound of your town's markets, they're all becoming less real than the sound of your centurion's voice, or the smell of stale sweat in your barrack. You are a Roman, but the people around you in this foreign land are not. They speak a different language, eat different food, and worship different gods. You've learned to say hello, where's the latrine, and I'm here to conquer your land, please don't kill me. In 3 different languages, and none of them are Latin. You are a conqueror, but you are also an outsider, a man forever separated from the world he has been sent to rule. Your comrades, your contubernium, they are your family now. You've shared a tent, a meal, a laugh, and 1,000 miserable moments with them. You've seen their fears, their hopes, and their triumphs. Your contubernium is your family now, which means you have 8 brothers who all snore, smell terrible, and know way too much about your bathroom habits. You are a band of brothers forged in the fire of shared misery, but this brotherhood is also a constant painful reminder of the family you've left behind. When a comrade falls in battle or to a disease, the loss is not just a military one, it's a personal one. You've lost a brother, a confidant, and a piece of your new, isolated life. One of the more obscure but profoundly miserable aspects of a Roman soldier's life was the legal prohibition on marriage. You were not allowed to be married while you were an active duty soldier. You could form relationships with local women, but they were not recognized by the state. Any children you had were not legitimate. It was a life without the stability of a family, without the comfort of a home. The empire demanded your complete and utter loyalty, and that meant you could not have a family to distract you, to pull your heart and your mind away from your duty. You were a fighting machine, and fighting machines do not need wives and children. This isolation was not just physical, it was deeply psychological. Historians still debate the extent of mental health issues among Roman soldiers, from depression to PTSD, given the psychological toll of their isolated lives. You are a man who has witnessed unimaginable horrors, who has been forced to commit terrible acts, and who has no one to talk to about it. The men in your tent are just as traumatized as you are. The centurion is not a therapist. You are alone with your ghosts, your memories, and your gnawing sense of loneliness. Your life is a paradox. You are a part of a great conquering force, a legionary of the most powerful empire the world has ever known. You are a part of a grand story that will be told for 1,000 years. But in your quiet moments, in the lonely hours of the night when you can't sleep, you are just a man. A man who is homesick. A man who misses the simple things. A man who is far, far from the place he belongs. The misery of a Roman soldier's life is not just in the visible wounds of battle, it's in the quiet, invisible wounds of the soul, the loneliness that settles in and never leaves. It's a feeling that will stay with you long after the fighting has stopped, a ghost that you can never run from. You've endured the march, the battle, the sickness, the financial burden, the filth, and the loneliness. You've given your youth, your body, and your spirit to the Roman Empire. You are a man who has lived a life of profound misery, an insignificant cog in a massive machine. But as you look back on it all as the years begin to fade, you can see a strange and tragic irony. You were not fighting just for land or for glory. You were building an empire, a legacy that would shape the world for 1,000 years. Your misery was the very foundation of its triumph. A common historical fact, one you see everywhere, is that the Roman Empire was built on the backs of its disciplined and long-suffering soldiers. The roads that crisscross the land, the aqueducts that bring water to its cities, the forts and walls that hold back its enemies, all of it was built by you. You carried the shovel and the pickaxe, you mixed the mortar, you laid the stones. The Empire will build a monument to some general who probably never saw a day of real combat, but you get to have a rock on a hill if you're lucky. They'll carve his name into marble, but your name, the name of the man who actually built the road to that marble quarry, will be forgotten. Your autobiography would just be a list of blisters, a record of bad food, and a catalog of all the different ways you were tired. You see the straight lines of the Roman roads, a testament to Roman engineering. But you also know that these roads are straight because you and 1,000 other miserable men made them so, carving a path through hostile territory, one shovelful of dirt at a time. An obscure detail of these roads is their complex, layered construction, the base of large stones, the gravel, the finely paved surface. They weren't just simple paths, they were feats of engineering, and they were built with the raw, brutal labor of men like you. They allowed the empire to move its armies, its trade, and its ideas, binding the vast territory together. The empire will build an aqueduct that can bring water for miles, but they won't build you a decent latrine in your barracks. That's the kind of grim joke you get used to. Historians still debate whether Roman soldiers were primarily motivated by a sense of duty to Rome, or by the promise of a retirement they might never receive. You have to wonder what truly kept you going. Was it the fear of your centurion? Was it the love of your comrades? Or was it just the sheer momentum of a life that was lived one miserable, grinding day at a time? You were a man who was promised glory, but all you got was a life of hardship. You were a man who was promised a future, but all you got was a present that was defined by a quiet, constant misery. You are the tragic irony of history, a forgotten man whose quiet suffering was the price of an empire's greatness. Now, as we fade from this story, let the images of the Roman soldier begin to soften. The clang of the gladius is replaced by a gentle hum. The heavy thud of the marching feet fades into the soft patter of rain on a roof. The acrid smell of the latrine is replaced by the gentle scent of clean night air. Your heavy armor is gone, the blisters on your feet have healed, and your hunger has been replaced by a deep sense of peace. The misery, the pain, the loneliness, it's all a part of a story that has now ended. Your journey is done. You can finally rest. The empire is now just a page in a history book, and you can finally close your eyes.